What if the signature on a billionaire's contract turned out to belong to the father of a struggling waitress who thought her life would never matter to anyone important? The restaurant glittered like a diamond, that night filled with laughter, and men in tailored suits, but behind the shimmer stood Emily balancing trays with tired hands. She'd been working double shifts for months, trying to pay off her father's hospital bills. Her uniform was clean, but old, her shoes worn, yet she never complained. She'd learned that kindness didn't feed you, but it kept your soul alive. That evening a private event was scheduled. A powerful CEO named Adrian Cole was hosting investors from around the world. His name carried the kind of weight that made managers tremble. He owned half the city and the other half wanted to be him when his team arrived. They demanded perfection. The manager gathered the staff and said clearly, "No mistakes tonight, one wrong move and you're out." Emily nodded, quietly hoping to stay invisible. Just another face behind the service. But fate never cared for plans. When the guests sat down, Adrian's assistant handed him a folder full of contracts. He flipped through them, signing one page after another between sips of wine. His pen moved without thought until his hand froze halfway across a page. His assistant leaned closer. "Everything all right, Sir?" Adrian stared at the last signature already printed at the bottom before his name. It looked faintly familiar, curved letters written with quiet confidence. He frowned, then signed and closed the folder, trying to ignore the strange chill in his chest. Moments later, Emily approached his table to serve dessert, her hands steady, despite her exhaustion as she placed the dish. His glass brushed against her tray and tipped wine spilled across the edge, crimson spreading across white linen. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said quickly, reaching for a napkin. He looked up, ready to scold, but stopped mid-sentence. His gaze fell on her necklace, a tiny wooden pendant carved into the shape of a compass. The same design he'd once seen decades ago, given to him by the man who taught him everything about business. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice sharper. "Then he meant—" She blinked, confused. "This, sir, it was my dad's. He made it when I was little." Adrian's hand tightened on the stem of his glass. "What's your father's name?" he asked. "David Miller," she said softly. The name hit him like thunder. His glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The entire room went silent. He stood slowly, eyes wide, and whispered, "David Miller was my mentor 25 years ago." The sound of the broken glass echoed through the restaurant. Everyone froze. The manager rushed forward, but Adrian lifted his hand, stopping him. His eyes were locked on Emily as if he was seeing a ghost. He spoke again, his voice shaking. "Where is your father now?" She hesitated, confused and cautious. He's in the hospital, sir. He's been there for months. He used to have his own construction company. But after the accident, everything fell apart. Adrian's world tilted, the air thickened around him. He whispered almost to himself, "An accident? What accident?" Emily looked down, trying to steady her voice. "The bridge collapse 5 years ago. He was the chief engineer. They blamed him for a design flaw, but he swore it wasn't his fault." She bit her lip, holding back tears. No one listened. He lost everything. After that, Adrian's grip tightened on the table. His face pale and unreadable, he remembered that bridge, the scandal that nearly cost his company billions, the report he signed, declaring David Miller responsible. He rose from his seat. Suddenly, the chair scraping the marble floor. "Take me to him," he said. She looked up, startled. "Sir, I can't—" "Please," he interrupted, his voice breaking. "This isn't about business anymore. Please take me to your father." The manager tried to interfere, but Adrian's tone left no room for argument. "I'll handle this." An hour later, they stood outside the small, worn hospital. Emily led him down a quiet hallway, the smell of antiseptic heavy in the air. She stopped at a door, her hand trembling as she pushed it open. Her father lay weak but awake, thin from months of illness. The oxygen machine hissed softly. "Dad, someone's here to see you." David opened his tired eyes. The color drained from Adrian's face. The years had changed him, but those eyes were the same. The same man who had once believed in him when no one else did. David looked confused, then slowly recognition dawned. "Adrian Cole." He whispered, his voice raspy. "The last person I expected to see." Adrian's throat tightened. "Mr. Miller," he said softly. "I didn't know you were alive." David smiled faintly. "I've been alive, just not living." Emily looked between them, confused. "You two know each other?" Her father nodded. This man was my protégé, my student. I taught him everything about construction and trust. He turned his gaze to Adrian. You were supposed to build, not destroy. Adrian closed his eyes, guilt washing over him. I thought you made a mistake, David. I saw your name on the report. The board blamed you, and I didn't question it. David chuckled weakly. I didn't expect you to. You were chasing the top, and I was just another name on the bottom line. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Dad, you never told me. He shook his head gently. No use telling the truth when no one believes it. Adrian's hands trembled. He pulled the contract from his coat, the same one he'd signed hours ago, pointing at the printed signature at the bottom. David Miller. That's my father's signature, Emily said in confusion. He nodded. This was part of the project. That bridge, it wasn't your design flaw, it was my company's greed. We used cheaper materials behind your back. David's eyes softened. I knew, he said quietly. But I signed it anyway. I needed the money for Emily's treatment. She was sick back. Then I thought I could fix it before anyone got hurt. But fate had other plans. Adrian felt his heart cave in. I destroyed you to save myself, he whispered. David smiled faintly and still. I taught you well because now you're here. Adrian dropped. His head ashamed. Sir, I owe you more than I can repay. David's breathing grew shallow. Don't repay me, help. Her Emily reached for her father's hand, tears streaming down her face. Dad, stop, please, don't say that. He smiled at her. You were always my compass. Never lose your direction. Promise me. She nodded, choking on her words. I promise. David's breathing grew weaker. The beeping on the monitor slowed. Emily gripped his hand tighter, begging him to stay. Adrian stood frozen, unable to speak. The man who had built him up was fading right in front of him. David's voice cracked softly. You have everything, Adrian, but if all you build is walls, then you've learned nothing. He turned to Emily, his eyes gentle. Don't hate him. He made mistakes. Like I did, just make sure you don't. Adrian felt something break inside as he whispered, I'm sorry for everything. David smiled faintly. I know you are, and then the line on the monitor went flat. Emily's cry filled the room. The nurse rushed. Thin, but it was too late. Adrian took a step back, his face pale, his world spinning. The nurse pulled a blanket over David's chest and left quietly, leaving only silence. Emily fell to her knees, whispering, Please come back, Dad. Please. Adrian knelt beside her, placing a shaking hand on her shoulder. He wanted to speak, but words felt useless. I'll make it right, he said finally, his voice raw. She looked at him through tears. How can you fix death? He swallowed hard. I can't bring him back, but I can bring his truth. The next morning, the headlines flashed across every business channel. Billionaire CEO confesses to decade-old cover-up. Adrian stood on stage facing a sea of reporters, his voice calm but broken. I built my empire on someone else's ruin, a man named David Miller, who was innocent of the charges that destroyed him. He was my mentor and my friend. I failed him, but I won't fail his family. He paused as flashes filled the room. This company will now bear his name. At the back of the room, Emily stood quietly holding her father's compass pendant in her hands. Tears fell, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from pride. Adrian stepped down from the podium, walked to her, and handed her a sealed envelope. This is yours. She opened it slowly. Inside were legal papers transferring half of his shares in the project to her name. Her eyes widened. I can't take this, she whispered. You have to, he said. Your father built this more than anyone I just took. The credit months passed, and the Miller Foundation was born, funding bridge safety programs across the country. Emily became its director. Her photo, next to her father's, hung in the new headquarters one afternoon. She walked into Adrian's office. Sunlight pouring through the glass walls. She placed the compass pendant on his desk. He looked at her surprised. She smiled softly. You need this, more than I do. He stared at it, then at her. You remind me of him. She nodded. Maybe that's the point. He smiled for the first time in months, genuine and quiet. Thank you for not hating me, she said softly. Thank you for proving my father right. He always said you'd find your way back. They stood there in silence, the kind that holds forgiveness between its breaths. That night, as the city lights flickered below, Adrian walked to the rooftop of his tower. Holding the compass, he whispered into the wind, "I hope you see this, old man. I finally learned what you tried to teach me, the needle on the compass." Trembled slightly, catching the light before it stilled, pointing straight ahead. If this story made you smile, share it with someone who needs a reminder that accidents can turn into beautiful beginnings.